There's always a danger, and thank you for coming along this morning, by the way, in your time. There's always a danger when you do one of these discussions that there's a danger of patronizing, there's a danger of not recognizing who's actually in the audience and what your interest is, and perhaps even your familiarity with RPA. Just sorry to do this to you. How many of you in the room feel you would be able to have a 2-minute discussion on RPA if you were asked to? Pretty decent show. Okay, so you're well down the road and discussing. How many of you would have RPA projects already running in your business? Okay, fantastic. So I'll try to skip over the low-level stuff, the high-level stuff, and try to go a little bit more meaningful into this. I'm just going to move that out of the way there. Advertising is great, but not if it gets in the way of other things. There we go. As most of you be aware, the RPA industry is still pretty young. The analysts are making fantastic predictions as to the direction of travel, what the value of the marketplace is, et cetera, et cetera. Not particularly important for this particular discussion. I'm going to take about a half an hour here, and hopefully we'll have 10, 15 minutes for a bit of a chat. But it would be reasonable to say that it's in an early stage of growth, despite the fact that, like I said a little earlier, if you were in here, we've gone from 150 people to 2,500 in the space of 2 years. It's growing rapidly from our perspective. Now, what's becoming very clear, and acknowledging that many people in the room already have an RPA program running, you may already have a very well-funded RPA strategy, which is going to take you a long way down the road. But if we stop for a moment and pause, the analyst view from a variety of places, and I can happily make these papers available, which you will see on the bottom of the screen. I can happily make those available to you later if you wish to have them, is that the current rate of automation is hitting between 3 and 7% of what's possible. And that actually there is a potential to automate up to 40% of what we commonly do in our workplace every day. So our present direction of travel, although there's great talk of exponential growth and potential, we're only hitting a tiny proportion of what's possible. We're starting to move now towards an era which we're referring to as citizen-led automation. Some of our customers, I think, actually gave us that phrase, citizen-led automation. What is that meaning? Well, it's taking a closer look at these sort of analytics, which, as you can see, comes from Forrester Consulting. What it's really saying here, particularly in these areas, that there's a large proportion of work carried out every day in the administration of a business, not getting away from the fact that even in engineering roles, we can touch the same things, but in the administration of the building where there's 60 to 65% of the work that has been done is repeatable and automatable. This is not my words, this is somebody else's words. So we need to think about that. And we combine that with the thinking of McKinsey's, and this report came out last year, which is stating it is reasonable to think that in 60% of all occupations, not jobs, in 60% of all occupations, about 30% of that which is carried out can be automated, will be automated. It's pretty much inevitable at this stage, although we're open to argument, of course. But the argument will be, is it 30% or is it 25%? It doesn't really matter at this point in time, right? So a fairly consistent line of argument saying we're only looking at the top of the iceberg, to use an analogy. So what is automation? Because a lot of people have different views. Now, there's obviously a reasonably expert audience in here this morning, so I'll do that non-patronizing thing. But coming back to the discussion we've just had about culture, which touches on, is culture about change? How do you affect change and maintain culture? There's a lot of people out there would like to tell you, this automation's dreadful. Robotics is going to destroy jobs. We're going to take jobs away from people. And all sorts of other implications. Funnily enough, you can't really pick up an analyst paper on this subject, but you can pick up lots of analyst papers on the other side of the equation. You can well imagine what the reaction of a bunch of farm workers was when one of these chaps turned up on the farm first. Fear of, what am I going to do? What's my job going to be? Now, of course, there's a period of change and a period of a little of uncertainty, a little bit like Brexit, you might say. But for whatever happened when that tractor turned up, everybody got jobs. Maybe there were different jobs. Maybe they were now inside, out of the cold weather and the mud, and processing the farm produce as it came in from the field brought by the tractor. One thing is certain, change is a certainty. I'm wondering if we said to a building company, I'm going to take away the gun, the nail gun, in case that wasn't quite clear, the nail gun and the power screwdriver, and I'm going to give you back a screwdriver and a hammer. What would that do to productivity? More important, what's my point? Automation or tooling for a faster way of being, a better way of being productive is what it's all about. And certainly when we're talking to our customers, we talk about, you're going through change. You're going through a modernization the same way as you implemented Oracle or SAP or whatever it was some years ago, because you could be more productive. Now there's another set of tools, and all of us here in the software industry, and we know from the very first time a line of code was written, we were on a line of automation. There's no going backwards from this. So we find there's a need within cultures, within disciplines, to help everybody understand robotics and the digital workforce is not about destroying jobs. It's just about another step on the way to things we've already been doing effectively for centuries. You can well imagine, and this may be a ridiculous analogy, but you can well imagine when the first Stone Age man tied a sharp slate to the end of the stick so he could dig a hole, the guys with the big hands went, gee, what am I going to do? I can't dig holes anymore. It's maybe ridiculous, but it does help people understand. We're on a line that we cannot change. And there's lots of evidence there to back it up. Gartner believes that actually RPA and AI is going to create more jobs. How many of you actually have some exposure to Salesforce as a product? Oh my goodness me, yeah. We're all unlucky, aren't we? 10 years ago, 12 years ago, if you could have imagined that Salesforce was going to create a whole new culture, a whole new industry, the force.com, and the hundreds of software companies that have evolved off the back of a CRM automation tool. We all find a way. Each new piece of automation creates another problem that will have to be solved by another piece of automation. It's the way it works. And the impact that it's having on some businesses is quite startling at times. Generali have been a company who've been working with us since 2016, so they're quite a distance down the RPA market. And they are talking about within their contact centers, call centers, within the way that they deal with their customers, they're talking about RPA enabling them to do their job better, and they now receive compliments from their customers where there used to be complaints. I'm sure they still get complaints. Let's not get carried away with the whole thing. And this is a startling statistic for me, because in my history over those 35 years, I've never seen a central government department stand on a stage or made an open statement to say they've used a piece of new technology and within a very short period of time they've driven something they couldn't previously achieve. And that's quite a startling statement. And I'm not here to pitch UiPath, I'm here to pitch automation. Then if you're interested afterwards, we'll talk about that. So is it being successful? There's some evidence that is. I could give you a couple of hundred use cases of what's actually going on. But from an analytical point of view, what is the impact of RPA on people thus far? Well, 71% reduction in manual efforts. In other words, people are having to do less manual stuff and they can start to use this stuff. People often use the phrase, RPA is about taking the robot out of the individual. In other words, removing repetitive, mind-numbing, boring work and enabling people to use their head, which is actually what they probably like to do. You can read the other statistics for yourself. Here's a statistic from one of our own customers, but it has been substantiated by McKinsey's, Morgan Stanley's, and Capgemini in different guises. Again, at the end of the presentation, I'll give you some links, but if you want to have those sent to you, I'll send them to you. A 1% increase in automation in this particular US bank has led them to spend $173 million on RPA with an economic output of 519, about a it's about a 3-to-1 return. However, they recognize that if they increase their automation by another 5%, the return keeps coming. And these are validated numbers. Back to the previous slide, which I gave you, that one there. Reducing manual efforts, delivering a better customer service. So when you look at the economic values, that's cost savings plus improved customer service, therefore retaining customers. They're therefore not spending as much money on trying to keep customers by telling them that you're wonderful and instead just being wonderful. At least that's the approach. And here's another piece of research which, unfortunately, I had 20 of these printed yesterday and beautifully bound for you to take away, and then I left them on my desk. So if you write to me afterwards, I will send you a hard copy. It's sometimes nice to get a hard-bound copy. But this is, has RPA improved various aspects of employee engagement? So this is the employer, I think, yes, reflecting back on how employees' own engagement in their work has improved as a consequence of deploying automation. Pretty startling statistics. Employees saving time, employees are engaged in the design and implementation. A little bit like our earlier discussion, we're talking about maintaining culture and keeping culture in place. When you engage the people that have an interest in your culture, in helping you to drive the change, then they own the change, they own the culture. If you start imposing culture and change, obviously I don't need to tell this audience, start imposing change in culture and people, pretty normally you'll get a bit of a reluctance to go along the way. Again, another way of looking at the stats, how RPA has restructured employees' jobs. This is like the farm workers. You know, you're still going to be farm workers, but you're not going to be in the mud and in the fields and in the rain. You're still going to be there, but you're going to be doing a better job that you'll enjoy more. That type of comparison, if you will. And again, how has it economically benefited the business as a whole? So you can see the statistic for yourselves. Which area you're seeing the most economic benefit by using automation? 48%, I want to pick out the one in the middle, the contact center piece, 48%, because that's still in its infancy. Now RPA, I don't know, are there any people in here whose businesses are running contact centers? I know Admiral are here, yeah, okay. So the simple matter here is, what percentage more calls could you ask a call operator to take per day? 20%, 25%? Could you make the calls shorter? Probably. Could you avoid the customer calling you again because the manner in which the contact was completed was incomplete? The data didn't arrive. It wasn't understood. There are all sorts of statistics. People who run contact centers and call centers have a number of metrics around this. The RPA solution, or automation solution to this, is quite straightforward. It avoids what we call swivel chair action. So you will be aware that in most call centers, a given call handler is probably exposed to 6 to 8 applications, and they're jumping in and out of applications to try and create a view of the client. What if, on the moment the client arrives in the phone, or even before, in that bit when it says, please press 1 for customer service, press 2 if it's about your account, etc. When the call is answered, already on the screen in front of the call operator is your complete story, already gathered from everywhere. You're greeted, you're given a couple of questions, you say what you want, and the call can be closed. RPA in a contact center is having enormous effect already, and we're really only in the first 5 to 10% of what we think is possible. Very, very worthwhile thinking about. Again, just a reminder, back to the thing, so we've talked about employee engagement, employer benefits from RPA, and we're talking, just to refer you back to, yes, it's because of this 65-70% of what is deemed to be highly susceptible to automation. Maybe susceptible isn't a very acceptable word, but you know what we're getting at. Here's a quotation from one of our clients, and we have a bundle of these type of things. It's not because it's us. I want to make that clear. Other RPA vendors have RPA products, but the output and the outcome of some of these projects are somewhat startling. There was a danger about a year ago, as we were going through our hyper-growth, and we're continuing, we're going to hire another 1,000 people this year, that it was just a hype. We come to some of these conferences, people say it's just a hype. By this time next year, something else will have replaced it. But in fact, as RPA and AI merge, the scope is getting greater, the possibility is becoming greater, and that's quite a startling output. And I've got dozens of these cases, whether from ourselves or from other projects. Who is doing it? Now, this is 2 complex slides, because on many, many points, we come into a business, we ask, where are you doing the automation? So looking at this is what we would call a reference to back-end robotics, which is the more, when you think robotics and RPA, you will think about back-end robotics more than you will about front-end. I'll come to front-end in a moment. But I could give you a use case for every single one of these actions, and anybody who's running a procure-to-pay or an order-to-cash process in their business will be familiar with some of the names and titles of the various processes. This is common stuff. And the green numbers represent what we have experienced as savings across those processes. So we have identified customers who, for example, in an order-to-cash process, have saved between 50 and 70% of their costs by automating that process. And likewise for the other points around there, HR, onboarding, offboarding. And these are the background automation tasks which every business has. And for that reason, we haven't yet verticalized our business, although we're building solutions for certain practices. One of the things that isn't up there, but it can be both a back office or a front office process, is very skilled workers. So we've presented this in skilled environments. We've actually presented it in Rolls-Royce, to be quite honest, and with Jaguar Land Rover, a number of others. There are some very expensive people doing very skilled jobs and paid 6-figure salaries. And yet they were telling us they were spending 20 to 25% of their day cutting and pasting data from their work to some other data source, to some other place. So a quarter of their day, a quarter of their complete cost is caught up doing something that they don't need to do, don't want to do, are actually demotivated by the fact that they do have to do it. Savings in those areas, although not thousands and thousands of people, but the savings are just phenomenal, phenomenal. Talking about getting back £25,000 from somebody who's paid £100,000 a year. And I can tell you for sure, a robot is nowhere near to £25,000 a year, including cost. The front office processes, there are many, many here. Again, I can send you use cases on some of these if you wish, and we've built up a practice around that on its own. I was going to give you another interesting case, and it's just gone straight out of my head again, almost as fast as it came in. Senior moment. So what could possibly go wrong? Because, of course, no IT project is perfect, as we all know. And these aren't, by the way, I should say, this isn't an IT project. RPA is not an IT project. And if any of your businesses are approaching it as if it is, please stop. This is a business project, which IT has an incredibly important role in. But because the savings are business-driven, don't allow it become a business project. Oh, sorry, an IT project. What is actually happening with our own customers, and this is starting to speed up. I would have said 2 years ago, the companies that first put their toe in the water with RPA made a small investment, 15, 20, 25, 30K, put some robotics in place, put some skills around it, and learned about what they could do. And they went back to the board and said, you gave me 100,000 or 50,000 pounds, I did some automation, look at the savings I'm driving, am I not very clever? And they made that person the head of digital transformation, or the head of automation, and put them under the CIO, or under the CFO, or under the COO, and said, that's your job, go and do that. So then they went and automated a department, a swim lane, if you like, all right? And they did very well, and they spent the money very cleverly. And they went back to the board and said, hey, look how clever I am. You gave me some money for automation. I've automated our order to cash, or one of those processes I showed you. Okay, I've done that. We've saved some money. And the board got very, very excited and said, this is fantastic. This could be terribly important for our business. Let's go and automate the whole company. Let's swim the channel, all right? So the head of digital transformation or the head of automation is now like a rabbit in the headlights, because now there's going to have to be cross-departmental automation. There's going to be politics. There's going to be all manner of other practices which may not be the expertise of that person. And we're seeing projects stall because the board isn't running the project. Although the board is maybe handing over the money, when the project manager, the project director, the head of digital transformation goes upstairs, he still has to ask for the money to do a project. Where we're seeing fantastic success and where the projects are really moving at pace and the benefits are being delivered at pace is where the board take ownership. Somewhere between swimming the pool and swimming the channel. They grasp it. One customer of ours recently told me, we've taken a decision, the CFO told me, we've taken a decision, we're going to take, and this is, by the way, a business with 23,000 employees working across 27 countries, I think it is. He said, we have taken 20% out of every line of business's budget. Every business owner in the company is having their budget cut by 20%, unless they have an automation project. Brilliant, just brilliant. That's the way to drive change. And they're asking each business owner, each budget owner to contribute to what it is they will automate. Fantastic program. But this is the state of it. What's happening is things are getting a bit stuck here and they need a bit of help. And I would urge, and there's C-level people here in this room, I would urge you take ownership. Empower the people who can do the job and don't let that poor individual stand there like a rabbit in the headlights. There's progress to be made and we've all the evidence to back up that going at speed doesn't hurt. When you're doing this, when you're thinking about it, and as those who've got into swimming the channel, we've looked at what is it that people are actually worrying about. So when people say, okay, automating the enterprise, this is a big thing. Now we've talked about scaling up. Now we talk about making sure we have compliancy. Yes, absolutely right. It's hard to do. It ain't easy. And that's why the projects are stalling, because it's sometimes being left in the hands of people who are wonderfully gifted, but are not fully empowered and maybe a little short on experience. So we would encourage, get this on. This is a very useful paper to read. It's written by Forrester Consulting again, but it's all about the things that you need to think about if you're going enterprise-wide. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest if you get this right, then your RPA project can continue at some speed. And finally, we got here pretty fast. The next stage of automation moves us to a place where that, if you remember my opening slide, we're saying 3 to 7% of automation is where we are at the moment, whereas the scope is to do 40%. The concept of a robot for every person is as natural as having Office 365 or G Suite on your desktop. We have to, I believe, and our company believes, and most of the industry believes, it will be as natural to have a robot on your desktop as it will be to have one of those things. And we will be detailing to that robot what we want done on a daily basis with ease. Drag and drop, talking to it, and everything else. One of the guys in our company is currently working on a project for me so that when I leave a meeting, a robot calls me, tells me and reminds me I've just had a meeting with Joe Bloggs, whatever they may be, and they say, would you like to update your close date in Salesforce? Would you like to update the value of the order? Would you like to update your next activity? And take my voice file and put it into Salesforce. Beauty for me, I don't have to do that anymore. Click, drop down, choose something, drop down, click something, next page, go on. It's a pain in the backside, we all know that. We are looking at one of our consulting partners, global consulting partners, has looked across a number of things that people do on a daily basis, whether at consulting level or administrative level, and they've created menus of mini automations that they are currently rolling out to their employees. So it's an internal, but they're a global business consulting that you will know. I'm not allowed to yet mention their name. I think in about a month's time I can. They've currently rolled out about 25,000 what we call attended robots, robots on the desktop. And they're doing things like the robot, you initiate a robot, asks, where do you want to fly to? What time do you need to be there? When do you want to be back? Where should your hotel be? And it just takes the task, goes away, does it, and brings it back, following corporate rules, corporate principles. Another robot opening up a number of applications. You arrive in the morning. It's only annoying. It's only 30 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes. Open up the apps I'm going to need today. Can you show me, please, all my unread emails? Would you like to see your unread emails? Yes. Up they come. You can set filters and make them intelligent. So let me see the ones that are urgent. Let me see the ones that are external to the company and those that are internal to the company. Rather than you having to go through it all. Robots that add 30 seconds of value here, 1 minute of value there, 2 minutes of value there. And this consulting company have worked it all out to the point that their aim is to generate between 8 and 10 hours of productive work per employee per month. And some of those would be billable consultants and some of those would be back office. But to do that for the cost of one of their hours per month. So the question becomes, if you could spend the equivalent of an employee's hour on some technology that gave you back a day per month in genuine productivity, would you do it? Of course we did. Of course we did. That's why we bought Excel. That's why we bought Word. That's why we bought PowerPoint. And that's why the argument is so parallel. And we believe that's the direction of travel. I said they've rolled out 25,000 already. Their aim is to roll out 140,000 robots in the coming 24-month period because they've grasped that automation, the digital workforce, has arrived. If you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got one. We've been talking quite a lot about the role of automation in business transformation and in driving change. I wanted to explore a little bit the extent to which you think RPA actually contributes to that. For me, RPA is process improvement. So you're taking a lot of existing things and perhaps putting a little bit of a band-aid over some of those processes. Where I would have thought the real transformation changes come with better process automation and intelligent process automation, because they are actually re-engineering the process rather than making existing processes more efficient. I wondered if you wanted to explore that.
I think there's a little bit of both there. I think some people are now moving away from the phrase RPA and they're moving to intelligent automation because the combination of AI and RPA is what's really going to drive some enormous change. I wouldn't agree with the point that RPA is a bit of a band-aid. I've heard it before, but it isn't. You can automate an awful process, or you can put the process through a lean machine and make it very slick and then automate it. I personally take a view that there's nothing wrong with automating a pretty rubbishy process. If it delivers you back an ROI which is good for the business, so be it. I'm watching a lot of businesses spend a great deal of money on Lean Six Sigma so they can optimize all the processes and then they automate them. Well, that's a lot of money they're spending up front. I mean, for the cost of doing the automation in the first instance, they're double spending on doing the Lean Six Sigma. I'm not saying that's wrong. But the Band-Aid thing doesn't work for me at all. If you automate, you're making things slicker.
So it's a bit of both, I guess, right?
Yes,
So,
yeah.
So the RPA is giving you efficiency opportunities, it's giving you the opportunity then to perhaps invest in some deeper automated changes.
Yeah, I mean, the typical payback we're seeing, the threat to jobs thing is going away. The typical payback we're seeing is where in a financial, within financial processes or HR processes, time is being saved and you're getting FTE time back. But companies aren't moving the FTEs out, they're now moving them somewhere else, customer service, whatever. Inevitably, not everybody fits every seat. And so there will be people who don't want to embrace that change. As much as the farm worker may not have wanted to move into the warehouse, or the builder said, no, I won't use the power driver or the nail hammer. This to me is just human nature. I don't think we can affect that. This is just, it's doing what we've always been doing. It's just doing it now a different way. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think as part of that, I guess what I'm looking for is some help in understanding, if you're trying to do transformative process change, it's kind of understanding what are the good RPA candidates versus what's a good process re-engineering plus digital automation type of candidates. And kind of getting that balance right. Because I think the business hears a lot about see it, and I think what they miss in that, to your point earlier, is that business transformation is actually talking about changing your business process and optimising that and introducing automation whilst you do that.
True, true.
One does not necessarily equal the other. It's kind of,
And we would argue think automation first, but then of course we would.
The point of transformation is to change the outcome substantially. Even if you don't change the process, this is changing the outcome substantially. So it qualifies on the outcomes perspective of transformation. It doesn't qualify on the have you done a big change in the process, but on the outcomes it qualifies.
And maybe in the big picture, it's okay to run a rubbish process.
Yeah.
Because it's not important to make it better. Maybe we want to focus on something else.
Do you think, though, that people are mixing between automating and changing the business you're in? We're always now talking about digital disruptions way off the chart over here. And we've started talking about systems of record and systems of intelligence. And, you know, most businesses with system of record, we have some system of record, we use the process and we change it to a different state. And we expose those processes to people to run. And automation, changing those states is good because it takes costs out.
Yeah.
Then we hear all about digital disruption where people are using ecosystems and all this stuff, changing the way business is done. And I think, and we've really separated changing the business we're in and changing the way business is done into systems of intelligence and systems of record. And a lot of this is going on systems of record, you know, traditional process. And then actually there's the disruptions that sometimes work and sometimes don't work. I think, you know, that's your risk angle. And then to your point, does it always make sense to look at the risk angle when you can take a lot out of your basic business?
Well, and any CFO will turn around, well, I'll change the process. What do I get out of it? Yeah. Well, the process will be slicker, and I can automate the process. What will that mean? A, we'll go back to our customers faster. B, we'll need less people to do the job. We can put people who are doing mundane stuff onto something a little more intelligent. CFO will go, well, I like that one. Is that cheaper? Yes. Okay, I'll do that then. I think it's great to lean and make processes better, and that should be done. We would never advocate to automate something which is pretty crappy. And our biggest discoveries here with some of our clients is they thought they knew what they were doing, and then they find they're actually doing the same task, but in 6 or 7 or 8 different ways. And what the automation has done is help them understand that and then automate it.
yeah, I guess that's, I mean, I would always think, I guess it's a blended strategy of all of those things. Isn't
Yeah.
it, really?
Yeah.
So you try and do some of the low hanging to automate that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Type stuff.
You can still bang in a nail with a hammer. You can still screw a screw into timber with a screwdriver. But why would you when you can do it 10 times faster?
And on that note, Rory, I think we've timed out.
All
So
right.
thank you for an interesting presentation around
Pleasure.
automation.